All right, thank you everyone for being here. This is Lost and Loved, empowering your community to get lost pets home. And this is sponsored by PetHub. We are so excited to have you all here. We love reuniting pets with their families and just really appreciate being able to bring families back together. So thank you for being here. My name is Katelyn Durkin. I'm the manager for network partner relations at Best Friends, and I am just here to get us started before our incredible panelists share their expertise with you. So let's get the boring stuff out of the way. We've got some housekeeping. First thing is you will see on your Zoom that we have a chat as well as the Q&A. So it's a little bit weird to use two different things, but it is important. If you put your questions through to the Q&A, that makes sure that I can see those and ask them of our panelists and make sure the panelists can see those. It allows us to pull a report so that we can look into this, even if we don't answer it here, that we can find other ways to, bring your feedback into our content. So please do use that. Our chat's being a little bit fussy right now, but once we get that going, that's a good place to share reactions, your own ideas, your own responses to what's going on here. We would also really love to have your feedback. So this is the point where I pause and say a really genuine thank you to everyone who is attending this webinar live or watching it recorded. I know that every single person has many people, many pets who are clamoring for your attention right now. So you giving us an hour of your time is really an honor, and we want to take that very seriously. So that's why we want your feedback. We want to make sure we're doing well by you. So there'll be a one question, very short survey right at the end of this webinar. You're also very welcome to email us if there's anything else you want to say. Our email address is bfnetwork@bestfriends.org. We are also going to make this webinar recording available in about 3 business days. So we will send it out to everybody who registered, and you're going to be able to share that on. It will also be available on the Best Friends Network website. Now on to the better stuff. I get to introduce our incredible panelists today. Pima Animal Care Center was kind enough to lend us 2 folks for this afternoon. So Kaitlyn Pappas, Pet Resources Manager, and Michelle Figueroa, Program Manager. They have done really incredible work around engaging the community to get more pets home. I'm so excited to have both of them here. We have at the bottom of the slide some basic information about Pima Animal Care Center. We know that you all are working in different contexts, and what's going to work really great at an organization that large, at a government, might not work exactly the same at your organization. So we want to give you this context just to help you map, okay, this is the part that works. This is the part I might have to adjust to have it work at my organization. We are also joined by Nick Walton, Senior Manager of National Shelter Support at Best Friends Animal Society. His expertise on this is going to be around field services. So how do we engage our animal control officers to help reunite pets? How do we incentivize them to do so and reward them for doing so? And then we're also joined by Lorien Clemens, Chief Executive Officer at PetHub. Again, sponsoring this webinar. Lorien's done amazing work around preventing animals from having to come to the shelter, providing the pet owners with what they need to get their pets back home if they ever do go missing really quickly. So we're really excited to have her here as well. Before I start asking our excellent panelist questions, I want to promote our Return to Home Challenge. That is a companion piece to this webinar. So this is Best Friends providing you with some support and incentive to increase your return to home, return to owner, reclaim rates through the month of September. So we've got some basic information here, and I know it's a little small to read, but if you scan this QR code, or we'll share out the link to it, you can find all the information about this. If you participate and meet all of our basic requirements, you're guaranteed $1,000. If you do exceptionally well in one area, we're giving $5,000, $10,000 grants to participants as well. So really want to encourage you to look into doing that if your organization does reclaims. Included with one of those requirements is distributing PetHub tags. So PetHub, as part of the sponsorship, has been kind enough to help us with getting tags to send directly to your organization. So if you signed up, we're going to send you 50 to just give out and really help out those pets and pet owners. I do want to flag that while we are going to be talking about both cats and dogs during this webinar, the Return to Home Challenge is specifically about dogs. And I honestly expect some mixed reactions to that, and that is warranted. Both species need our help, and anytime we're making a choice between one and the other in our programming, we want to be really strategic about that and cognizant of why we're doing that. So the reason we're doing that is because we've seen a major regression, 26% in return to home rates for dogs since 2019. So that means that we have work to do, but we also know we've been more successful in the past. So specifically for this challenge, we want to focus on getting that number back up. But of course, we know a lot of the strategies are similar. We know we need to increase reclaim rates for cats. So just throwing it out there that we're not thinking about the cats, but we are going to focus on the dogs in this challenge. And part of the challenge is going to be asking you to make operational changes. So I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, but I wanted to give you a quick look at some of the things that your organization could do to increase reclaim rates. So things like Petco Love Lost, which I expect some of our panelists will talk about, getting high quality photos, flyering in the area. So these are going to be interventions we're asking you to make during this challenge to participate. Okay, so without further ado, I am going to turn things over to our panelists. And first thing, I want to ask each of you to introduce yourselves by talking about something related to return to home that you are really proud of.
All right, so thank you first off for the opportunity. Can I clear the air and make sure that everybody can hear me? Can't see myself on video, so I'm just making sure that I'm coming through. There we go. All right, so I'm Nick Walton. I'm with Best Friends. Thank you so much. So the question that you had asked is like, what are we proud about, right? Like, what is the, I gotta say, and I have a story on this, I'll try to be quick with it, but within my first year of animal services, within the first year, I was not working on a proactive peer-to-peer problem or solution-oriented approach. I was very much make it, rain citations. Any violation, you get a citation. And within the first year, there was this one moment, this one dog that changed everything for me. It was this dog, and I was an animal control officer, and there was this dog on Detroit Avenue. And I pick it up, put it on the truck, didn't have tags, didn't have microchips, so I kept my day going, right? 4 hours, this dog sat on the truck. And getting bumped around. I don't know if anybody's been to Atlanta, but there's more potholes than actual streets. So it was pretty brutal. And, it's tough for the dogs in the back of the truck whenever they are confined. So we get to the shelter, and then like a stranger gets the dog out, and there's all these sights and smells and, people trying to poke and prod, and the dog nipped out of vet tech. The dog was a super friendly dog. It was just scared as heck. That dog was eventually euthanized for, we were over capacity. It's a sad reality of the industry. And the family came in to look for the dog, and I happened to be in the lobby. It was a husband, a wife, and two little girls. And I had to inform them that their dog was euthanized. And they broke down crying in the lobby, and they literally fell on the ground in just absolute utter devastation. And I thought to myself, like, first off, I didn't even try to get this dog back home. Come to find out, I picked the dog up directly in front of its house. And that burned me. And it still burns me to this day when I think about it. I could have handled it differently, but I used it as fuel moving forward. And so from that moment forward, I told myself I'm going to do everything that is possible to get dogs back home. And that started a lifelong mission to be creative in that effort. So I'm not proud of it, but it was definitely impactful. That helped me kind of become proud of myself.
Thank you.
I can introduce myself. So hi, everybody. I'm Lorien Clemens. I'm the co-founder and CEO of PetHub. It's hard to nail down what's the one thing that resonates with you. But I think, when I got into this industry 15 years ago, when we first started PetHub, I had no idea of all the ins and outs of return to home and everything that goes on the shelter side. And I was just a pet lover who was like, hey, let's do something to help pets, and let's use data in a really helpful way for people. And I think where I am most excited, and hopefully I can bring this to you guys, is that not only the power of, we've discovered how powerful tools can be, but also how we can use these tools to be adaptive. And we've been, we invented the QR tag back in 2010, QR pet tag. And in 2012 was when we actually started getting pets home. And I have to say that first night, we had a phone number on the thing. We didn't have enough money to pay for a call center. So that the call center crew was myself, my husband, and then a couple of our employees who were willing to, take overnight calls. But we got a call at like 11 o'clock at night, right before Christmas. And it was a dog and another dog that didn't have a collar or tag on, but it was a dog named Bella that had been found just outside of Memphis. And when we finally got a hold of the pet parents, Bella had been missing for about 6 hours with their other dog, Bella and Tibbs, and they had been gone, and they couldn't find him anywhere, and they were 35 miles away because the dogs had jumped into the back of a delivery truck and then got taken all the way to Memphis. And that feeling that Tom and I had, and the side note to this, we were in Brazil when this was happening. So we were answering our phones and paying ridiculous amounts of money so that we could do this, was amazing. And that talking to those parents and everything, that really lit the fire for me of like, this is what I have to do forever because I have to be able to give people this kind of joy that, miles and miles away from home, but only gone for 6 hours. These dogs are now home and safe. So that was kind of me getting into it, much like Nick's, like that was what his fuel was. That was really my fuel for this is important and we're going to make a big difference here.
Well, my name's Kaitlyn. I'm with Pima Animal Care. I've worked here for over 6 years now. I've spent most of my time involved in intake and pet resources, helping families keep their pets in their home. Worked on a lot of projects over the years. We revamped and built our safety net program under pet support. We have other like keeping families together, financial assistance for pet owners. But it wasn't until May of last year, actually it was a few months before May of last year, that we really decided to focus on community lost and found, internal lost and found efforts. That was probably the last area we really needed to focus on. And I was asked to take a risk that I was really nervous about. I didn't want to take it, but it made sense to jump off that bridge, as our director likes to say. It seemed like it was an easy solution. It seemed too easy. It involved implementing Petco Love Lost as our only lost and found platform. It would have been really easy to say no. It would have been easy to complicate things and continue doing things that were comfortable that we had been doing for the last 6 years, but we decided to take that chance. And it went way better than expected. It was a real eye-opener. It showed us that the community wants to help us get pets home, and we have to trust them. We have to stop trying to steer the ship and let them help in the community, let them help your shelter.
So I'm Michelle. I am from Pima Animal Care Center along with Kaitlyn there. I've been here for going on 20 years. So I've worked in almost every department or overseen every department at some point in those 20 years. I am currently over community engagement, and I would say the one thing that probably stands out the most recently is our effort to engage the Hispanic community. And we have done an English-Spanish campaign that we are currently in the middle of, that started in January. And we looked at some data and looked at how many animals were coming in from the top 2 zip codes in Pima, and also who had the least adoptions or RTOs also in zip codes. And there were 2 zip codes there was a total of 5 zip codes that stood out, but 2 are the two that we focused on for the last 8 months. And so what we did was basically go into that community. It was Spanish speaking community, and we made sure we made sure that they understood PAC was here, what we were here for. A lot of it was they were scared of the government entity. They didn't want to come here for various reasons. And their culture is completely different in the aspect of animals. So we had to educate in that aspect, but we also wanted them to understand that our putting tags, microchipping, spay neuter, volunteering, fostering, adopting, were all things that we invited them to participate in. And so our effort in that for the last 8 months, their response has been wonderful. We have engaged that community more. We have started a county Espanol page, Facebook page, which also has taken off. And so we're engaging in that community a whole lot more. And we have been so successful that this program was funded by our friends of PAC. And so they have now funded for the next year. So we got the rest of this year and next year that they have funded for, and they fund for, you know, our advertising, our collars and our tags and our leashes that we're handing out to the community. And it's been great. It's a response that I don't think that we expected, but it's the community that we need to engage in and make sure that they know that we're here for them and we have resources to give them.
That's really amazing. Thank you all for sharing. I already, feel really excited to hear more about what you're going to say. And I think Molly, one of our attendees in the chat, said it really well. Just you've got really different stories, but are really coming at change really enthusiastically and effectively. So really appreciate those individual stories. I asked at the start for the names of a couple pets who had been reclaimed this week. So shout out to Ethel and Peppermint and Rodeo and everybody else who was named in the chat. We're really excited for them. And we definitely want to talk later in this webinar about how we make sure that as organizations, we're doing as much as we can to get those animals who have been intaked out back to their families as soon as possible. But before we get to that, I also want to start by talking about how do we do less of that? How do we prevent those animals from needing to come into the shelter in the first place? So I open that up to any of our panelists to discuss.
It's going to be difficult for me not to jump on this. I feel pretty passionate about it. I know every panelist here is going to have, like you just mentioned, a different perspective on how to achieve that. But from the field, and because the field is going to be a huge source of intake for a lot of shelters, I think that it's apropos to start there. So one of the first things that I've noticed through my career, and especially with best friends, so I have the opportunity to see different agencies across the country. And no matter how much technology, no matter how much training is provided, no matter what policies are in place, what I see happen quite often is there's a divide between the team itself. There might be 2 officers that really go above and beyond for return to home efforts, but then the rest of the staff may not buy into it as much. And I do believe in unity. And I think that the first and most foremost, before we even dive into the tools and tricks, is actually trying, right? Actually putting in the effort and looking at a dog running at large as an investigation. And that's what I used to tell officers as a field training officer is whenever you have a dog running at large, apply the same amount of investigation into this and finding the animal's home as you would a high-level animal cruelty case or something like that. Because whenever you think of it that way, you really start to find creative ways and you put yourself in front of the information train. And a lot of times, everybody in the community already knows who this animal is, whether that be a break in trust that you're not getting information or you're simply not attempting to. Right? A lot of officers, after they get a dog on their truck, and I see it all the time, roll up their windows and drive down the street, park at a grocery store to write their call. You're simply removing yourself from access to information that can help the animals get back home. And so I know that's I don't want to make it seem like an easy answer, but it is so important for there to be unity within the team and also really actually make the concerted effort to try to get this animal back home.
I'd also like to add in, because Nick, I think that one of the things that we found when we did a survey, which I don't know how many people on the call are aware of the survey that we did in 2022 with NACA, National Animal Care and Control Association, where we we did, you know, over 4,000 pet parents who had lost a pet and over 3,000 animal welfare professionals. And we asked them, how did the pet get lost? And we found that 60% of the pets were lost in ways that are completely preventable. And then when we asked follow-up questions about what types of education or what types of help do you hear in your community about lost pet prevention resources, or what you should do when you get a new pet and how you should keep a pet from getting lost in the first place. And the pet parents were saying, I didn't get any information, or I didn't get any education, or I had no idea what to do. I didn't know this was even possible to happen, type of a thing. And so I would put it out there. I guess it's part of it, the challenge to look at is, are you as an organization also looking at it from like, how do we keep these pets from even getting lost in the first place? And the interesting thing that we heard when we went into one, I can't even remember which region it was, but one conference, and I was talking, I said, you know, what do you think is the main reason that pets get lost? And one of the people from the audience said, because pet owners are stupid. And I think that unfortunately exists. And they're letting them go. These aren't actually lost pets. They're just releasing them or whatever. And there's a lot of distrust now. And you mentioned it, Nick, like the community may be shutting down from interacting with you for whatever reason. Yeah. And here in my hometown here, I know that there's entire groups of people. So that's what Fig was talking about earlier. Our Spanish speaking community has voiced a lot how they do not feel like they're served at all by the local animal welfare folks. And they don't want to talk to them either because they're afraid they'll get in trouble and their dog will get taken away or whatever. So I think that, you know, education has to be a big part of it. And that education, like the 60% of all dogs were lost because they got out of a locked backyard or a closed backyard. They got out of the front door or back door that had been left open for some way, or they wandered off property. And when we talk, you know, to like what is wandered off property, the electronic fence didn't work, or they never leave my back porch, but they did that day or whatever. Like simply the people didn't know that this could actually happen, type of a thing. So those three things are completely preventable, you know. A thunderstorm that knocks your front door down or whatever, that's not preventable. But, you know, being able to like make sure that your backyard is secure and that your pet isn't ever in the backyard unsupervised just to roam around or whatever, like those kind of things are all preventable and trainable with education.
So
Yeah,
just
completely agree. Sorry,
ahead.
Michelle, go ahead.
No,
I want to touch on something before we wrap this up.
Just to add in, and I have a different perspective on kind of what you guys are saying, sort of in line with a little bit with what Nick said. So for me, if we don't have our staff believing in the mission of returning animals to their owners, it doesn't matter how hard we work on the other end, because our staff are the front facing and they're the ones that are leading this, right? So for us, we have contests with the intake staff, you know, they're on their Facebook pages when animals are coming in. They're looking at lost and found. We're encouraging them. We're having contests of who can reunite the most pets. And so we're pushing the mission to make sure that our staff understand that this is an important part of our job, right? We didn't push that before, and we just took it. It was a conveyor belt. We were just taking in animals and hoping that owners were coming in. And so for me, I'm looking at is we have to make sure that our staff are on board with our mission. We have to give them the tools to be able to accomplish this, and make sure that they understand when we're doing this is making our job easier in the shelter. We are able to now focus on animals that really do need us and not those ones that are just simply coming in, and we are not helping the effort to return them home.
One of my favorite things is to hear is whenever I host trainings for our staff, giving them talking points on how to talk to finders who are trying to bring in strays, or talk to owners who want to, they're either hopefully here to reclaim or they're trying to surrender their pet. After I host these trainings and I give them ways to go about it that's going to be receptive to the members of the public coming in, they come up to me and they're like, Katelyn, I said what you told me to say. I used those talking points and it worked. They decided to keep the pet. Just watching the light bulb go off in their head that it's feasible. The other thing I hear a lot from members of the community is they think that the shelter is the place for a lost pet to go. It's normal, it's been habit for decades now that you find a pet, it goes to animal control. Or they think it's safer. You know, if this person couldn't hold on to their pet, the shelter knows how to care for it. And we might do everything we can for the pets in our care. We might love animals, but it's just not a natural environment. We can't sustain this. We need the community's help. Pets are 85% more likely to make it back home to their families if they're kept out in the community where they were originally lost in the first place. 63% are found less than 3 doors down from their house or within a mile of their home. It's more hassle to get to the shelter. You have to drive out of your way, take time out of your busy schedule to drop off a pet. And it's not like quick drop off anymore. You have to talk to somebody. You have to give them your information. You could just knock on a couple doors and find an owner. It's much faster. It's way more productive.
Well said. I want to touch on something that Lauren mentioned, which is 60% of the animals found running at large was from something preventable. And correct me if I'm wrong there before I continue, but and I would love to have statistics on this as well, which is how many times have we been to the same house for the same thing on these preventable issues, which lends itself to the conversation of fence fixing or mending. Oftentimes officers will say, it's not my responsibility. And I'll say, no, it's not, but it is your problem, right? You are having to deal with it over and over and over again. Excuse me. And I think that that's one way to look at it, that it really helps influence officers to really be proactive with just go ahead and help fix the fence. And the best case scenario is doing it with the family members, right? Teaching them how and sharing that information on how you can quickly mend a chain link fence or have a toolbox stocked and ready. And that way you can begin to prevent that preventable animal running.
Yeah, I just add on to that, Nick, too. I mean, that's brilliant. And I was, when Jerica and I were talking about this, we've now communities that actually have relationships with local handymen and things like that, who will even go donate their services to families that couldn't afford to fix them. And they're on a list that the ACOs can say, here, call this guy here. He'll come out and he'll help you fix it. And, and all you need to do is give him lunch or whatever, kind of thing. Like, you have ways to build really great community things. And if I can add something too, something came up in the Q&A, and I don't know if you guys saw it, Fig and Katelyn, or not, but I know it's part of the way that you folks are approaching it, but it's also the way we've been approaching it. We don't know, we're let's face it, we're white people from North Central Washington. And when I go down into Tennessee, I have no idea what their issues are and things like that. And so this idea of outreach education, on a lot of times we're preaching to the community or everything that. So we've been working really hard to, first and foremost, when we're working with a client, we're trying to work with that client and really understand their community. But our approach is more in reach, and let's reach into the community and say hey, we want to help. We're seeing a lot of calls on lost pets in this particular neighborhood. Who could we talk to about so we can dig into try to figure out what the problem is, and we are actually been able to talk to community leaders who are they know what's going on. They've got the pulse of their community, rather than the external source, which frankly, if it's a government agency that's the external shelter source, that can be very intimidating for a lot of these communities. Being able to talk to, at one point they literally pointed us and said, you need to go talk to Pastor Ryan. He's the dog guy around here, and everybody at the church is they have things. So we went to talk to Pastor Ryan to see how can we help here, so that's our approach, is to in reach and not assume that we know what's going to work. We have a lot of ideas, but may not work for this community.
I'd love to invite Michelle to respond to that as well, because I know when we met, you were talking about ways to engage the community and community leaders, and you introduced yourself talking about how to make sure that the Spanish-speaking population is partnering with you around these goals.
Yeah, so we so in the Spanish campaign, we we called up a well-known restaurant owner who is basically locally famous here, and asked him if he wanted to be a part of this campaign. And I'm so grateful that he said yes, and he was all for it. So what we did was we partnered with him for his message. We messaged out through his restaurant because we knew the Hispanic community. He's a well-known figure, and so he lives in that area. And so we knew we had to build trust either via him or some other figure that they trusted. So we did our media through the restaurant's called Güero Canelo. So we used his platform. And also the most important part is about messaging in their native language, right? And understanding that they have their own, it may be Spanish, but they have their own idioms, their own expressions, their own what's important in their culture. So we use that as part of our media. We made sure we used words that they understood and that was easy, recognizable, and touched them, which also meant we had to use part of the culture, which is their food and their family oriented. And so we kind of pushed that media into that. Animals are part of your family. We made sure that and this is an example, for other communities, spay neuter is the first thing we push, right? We push spay neuter hard. And with this community, we realized that the steps of getting up to spay neuter had to be reversed. So for us, spay neuter is at the very top. And we started off with collars, free leashes, free microchips. And we worked our way up to spay neuter because we had to gain their trust. They weren't gonna automatically just understand spay neuter and be okay with it. So we had to basically gradually work our way into their home for them to understand that we weren't here to penalize them, punish them, take their dogs. And so we started very slowly, but it's about understanding that community. I come from that community. I currently live in that community. I'm a Tucson native. So for me, that's what was the excitement about it and why I felt like we could pull this off. And our comms team in the part of the county also was part of that. And that's how we accomplished that. And we still are. There's not an overnight, success. We're still trying to work our way into that community, and we will expand into other zip codes that are also purely Spanish speaking.
Can I answer one little quick question, because it's kind of related to all this, and it just came up in the Q&A from Lynn Cole, asking about, how do you help with that tone of educational material and everything that I agree. Shaming is not ever going to be good. Nobody ever wants to, like, you're a bad pet parent because you don't do X, There are though things that every pet parent needs to do. So here at PetHub, we try to approach things with humor and find that humor is universal. And people sometimes know that they should be doing something, but they don't want to be told like in that way. But if you're making it fun of it, not making fun of it, but you're keeping it light and everything, that is sometimes can help that be an easier pill to swallow. We have a ton of materials that are adaptable for anybody that's on this call. We offer them free to any shelter, rescue, you name it. And I'll get the link out so that you guys can all access it. But it's all on Canva. And for example, like with what Michelle was doing, and I don't know the vernacular of even in English vernacular. I don't necessarily know the slangs that you're using in your community. Again, North Central Washington, my slang pool is completely different than, let's say, South Boston or what have you. So you can change the copy so that it fits your voice. You can change it so that it's got your logo on it and all these different kinds of things. But it all is approached with humor, and like we all love our families. Pets are all family. And so like something like a big poster that says no naked pets, and it's got black bars on where the naked areas are, that can help you kind of get that idea of like, a collar is the best dressed dog in the room with a tag on it, kind of a thing. And like, don't let your dog ever go around naked kind of a thing is funny, but it also kind of underscores that idea of, this needs to happen, guys. Like a collar and a tag is their number one fastest way to get home. Before microchips, before anything else. It's if that collar and tag is intact, those dogs are getting home in 24 hours or less. So I'll put in a link. Katelyn, where should I put the link in? Into the chat?
Into the chat. That'd be great.
Okay, cool.
And we will also do a follow-up email. So if there's anything that you want to share later, I'll connect with you and we'll get it out to everyone. That's amazing. And y'all are getting a lot of love in the chat. So I really appreciate all that. I'm going to go for a hot second back to the challenge that I'm asking you all to join. So one of the ways that we are going to reward organizations with a higher grant amount, at least $10,000, is going to be on creative solutions to return to home. And I'm bringing this up now because I think it really ties to what our panelists have been saying, that Best Friends doesn't know what is best for your community. We can tell you, we give you resources, we can tell you good strategies, but in terms of what specific language is going to work for you, what people you need to get on board, you all in your communities are going to be the ones to know that. So we are asking you, in addition to some basic things that you can do to increase your return to home rates, to also think creatively about what is going to be really effective for your community. This change, this way of rewarding good work, came out of thinking about communities who have concerns about working with officers and might not be comfortable coming to a government agency, for example. And so we wanted to invite you all to find solutions that maybe aren't the traditional way that some of what we're going to talk about is going to be. That's my quick pitch for that. Also, we're going to pay you for it. So like, try these things on Best Friends Dime. Might as well. There you go. Okay, so we've got a handful of questions about ACOs, and I'm going to kind of pair them together. So I know, Nick, you're going to be our go-to guy on this, but also, of course, all other panelists on that as well. So we've got a couple of related questions. What do you do with maybe ACOs who aren't yet really invested in return to home? And related, what if your organization is not holding that contract? What if you're like partnering with another organization? How might you be able to influence that change when you don't have direct authority over it?
Yeah, so let's assume that, for instance, that we're in-house, because it's two separate situations, right? And so if you have in-house animal control, I believe in establishing what the role of an animal control officer is and should be. So historically, animal control officers were judged on how many animals they are picking up, how many citations they are issuing, and how many calls they run that day. And that is obviously a flawed metric, right? That does nothing proactive to solve any problems. It's a reactive model of law enforcement. And so flipping that upside down, and how many reunifications were you able to provide? Were you actually completing calls, or are you just saying complete so that you can go back the next week and respond to the same call again? And I think that first prism of thought, right, we have to factor in what is our role first and foremost. Edit your job descriptions, right, so that we're not recruiting the same individuals over and over and over again that don't necessarily have life-saving on top of mind. So that's more foundational, but then you really get into accountability from a leadership perspective. Do you have policy that not encourages but enforces and mandates return to home efforts? And if you do, well, then there has to be accountability on the back end from that leader to follow up. For instance, my boss used to call randomly the different people that I may have spoken with on a return to home effort. And that type of accountability and enforcement, and like making sure that the staff are actually doing what is on the policy, has been pretty helpful. Obviously, it's best case scenario not to even need any of that. It's best case scenario for all officers just to be totally bought in for a shared unified mission and vision. Now, let's say that the animal control officers are not in-house, right? You're a private organization contracted with a local municipality, or however that works. I always love to start personally with a olive branch of support, right? What do you need to do your jobs more effectively? And that doesn't just include return to home, right? Are you dealing with broken, unfunctional poles? Are you dealing with microchip scanners that are from 1992 that aren't universal? Do you have the tools necessary to do your job at a really high level? And if they don't, then I think that would be a really good place to start building a relationship, and then hopefully slipping in some. And one thing that I've noticed throughout this entire webinar so far is the amount of time the word trust has been said. I've been counting, and we're like at 11 or 12 at this point. And I think that we really do have to remain, no shaming. As Lauren mentioned earlier, you start shaming, and then that only is, like, as my mama would say, it's like pouring kerosene on a bonfire, right? You're never going to get anywhere. And so reaching out, providing support, obviously using Best Friends as a branch of support as well, right? Like if you're dealing with any agency that needs training on the subject, we provide all that for free. And that could be a way to get in as well. And to be frank with you, I could probably rant on that for hours, but I'm going to try to stop myself.
Well, before we do a new question, we have a fifth panelist. Hetty is here. Yay, Hetty.
Hello. She gets jealous when I'm talking to other people and wants to be center of attention. Sorry.
Fair point. All right, so let's talk about tools for a while. We've talked a lot about culture and building trust, but we also know we have a lot of tools to be really effective. So let's start with your tags, Lorien. Can you talk a little bit about how they work and why they work?
Yeah, can I? Oh, sorry about that. I want to actually back up if I can. And part of my answer would be to again reference back to the study that we did with NACA. When we were asking people who had lost their pets, how did your pet get home? And we asked them all a wide range of questions. But then one of the questions that we also asked them was, how long did your pet stay missing? How long did it take to get them home? And so when we looked and we cross-referenced, what tool or tools, so it was a check all that apply kind of thing, ultimately got your pet home, and how long were they lost? And then we cross-referenced all of those. We found that the number one thing to get lost pets home is getting off the couch and going and looking for the pet. Physical search was the number one thing to get them home in 24 hours. In fact, it was the number one thing all the way through a week. But the number two thing, well, actually the number three thing was ID tags. Number two thing was social media. However, when we took those people who said that their pet was wearing a digital ID tag, like a PetHub ID tag, at the time the pet was lost, all of a sudden it jumped up to number two, and it was right behind physical search. And our average, 96% of the pets that we get home through our system are home in 24 hours or less. And less than 2% of them ever hit that shelter door. We have different groups that have worked with us. We have Wenatchee, this is my hometown here. Wenatchee, when they serve 7 different communities in a 3-county range. And when they first implemented the tags in their first year, before it really even took off and the full community really understood it, they saved $40,000 for in the field, return to home. We were taking the phone calls, because every ID tag comes with our 24/7 call center, which, as Nick and the other panelists learned beforehand, we share a call center with a bunch of geeks that are doing Microsoft and Google and other kind of things. We deliberately picked them because we thought, these are smart people who are also huge animal fans. They fight over who's going to get to do the PetHub calls. But there's a 24/7 round the clock human being team that helps facilitates the pets getting home. I guarantee that most of you probably don't have 24/7 call happening. They might have a message that is left on the voicemail or whatever. But when a pet's lost and that pet finder wants to get help right now, or they're going to let the pet go, that's critical to be able to get them home immediately. So the ID tags is basically a QR code, a web address, and a phone number that links to a free online profile for the pet. Pet parent doesn't have to pay us a thing. If they want to upgrade to our premium services, that's how we keep our lights on. That's how we keep our costs low. They can upgrade to things like GPS mapping when the pet's tag gets scanned and other things like that. We work with over 1,000 different communities. We have over 100 different municipal shelters that work with us for rabies tags, pet licenses, adoption tags, spay neuter tags, you name it. And we're in the middle of developing a really great bulk buy program with Best Friends, so that you guys will get a very special discount on doing tag purchases too. So we're happy to have you. PetHub.solutions is how you find out about those programs. PetHub.com is our pet parent facing site, but PetHub.solutions is our the website for you guys to learn more.
Thank you.
Thank you for that little pitch. I wasn't planning on doing a big pitch, but
they asked for it. They need it. So it's good. I'm going to turn our next question over to Katelyn. I know you've done some work on this. So Eve asked us that in their community, they have over 25 lost and found pages. How are you at Pima making sure that your community knows where to go to find lost and found reports?
We're trying to make the message uniform across the board. We also have probably like a dozen lost and found pages in Pima County, just on Facebook alone. And then there's Nextdoor and whatever site you can think of, Instagram, Twitter, wherever people want to post. So we engaged the people who were moderating those pages. For one, we have pretty good relationships and we know who is in charge of what pages. So we reached out to them and wanted to have the same message. We all wanted to say the same thing. You know, you need to talk to your neighbors, post on social media, post on Petco Love Lost, check for a microchip. So if everybody's saying the same thing to both the finders and the owners, at some point they're going to link up by checking those steps. Petco Love Lost was a huge help trying to make everything uniform. Prior to using that, our lost and found page stressed me out to have to read, and this is what I do for a living. I should know all the steps, but trying to read our lost and found page and just knowing what to do was overwhelming. There was 15 different things on there. There was probably 8 different steps that it said for you to take, and then 15 other pages for you to post on, and you don't even know where to begin. And the average person is only going to do 1 to 3 things before they're going to give up in trying to find the owner or in trying to find their lost pet, unless they're an overachiever. And great, if that's how you feel. We have outlets for you, but we need to focus on the majority here. So we mimicked what Petco Love Lost was saying. They had 3 main things they wanted people to do. That was posting on a uniform page. In this case being Petco Love Lost, talking to your neighbors, and then checking for a tag or a microchip to see if there's any form of identification. So we're saying all the same things on our lost and found pages. We're getting other shelters and rescues involved to say the same thing also. And then our lost and found pages too. So you can post on those social media pages. It doesn't matter where you post, but as long as everybody's still posting on a uniform page like Petco Love Lost, which is right now used as the way to report it to the shelter, it'll help steer everybody in the same direction. Everybody wants to participate in lost and found. You just have to make sure they're saying the same message.
Thank you. All right, panelists, so you ready? We're done with the softballs. Our attendees have some harder questions for us, some troubleshooting stuff to go. All right, so Nikki asks, many pets find their way to us when they have medical needs. It seems that sick or injured pet animals find us. Vet bills are so expensive now. I wonder what other shelters do about these animals who are medically in need. So could you please speak to the overlap between veterinary care and return to home practices?
Are we talking about stray animals that come in with medical? I guess is that what the question was?
I think that's the question. Let's go with that.
For us, we're very lucky to have private clinics in town that if they are taking an animal that's a stray, they take the hit on financially because it's a Good Samaritan. They have funding for that. Not all private clinics here in town do that. So that is helpful. And they keep that animal to the following day, where then our animal protection officers pick those up. And if we need to continue treatment here, we will. Most of the time we do, because they are usually hit by cars and things that are need additional attention. As far as stray in-house, I will let Katelyn answer that. Her team is the one that deals with it the most as far as stray medical.
So it depends. If it's something it's not stable, it can't leave right away, we would keep it in the clinic. If we can get the finder to want to participate in its care, such as providing a foster home, we will. In some cases, those more critical cases, it does have to stay here to be stabilized. But if we have at least a foster home lined up for it to recover in after the fact, we'll take advantage of that. If it's minor medical, we'll send it straight to foster using one of our pathways right then and there. If an owner comes in for their pet and it's injured, it's under care in our clinic, we don't want that to be a barrier for them to be able to redeem that pet. So we work with them. If it's something that's going to require longer care outside of what our clinic is providing within like a 24 to 48 hour period, that's where our other programs come into play. So we have I've mentioned earlier, Keeping Families Together financial assistance we work with. We are also fortunate to have a friends group that runs a it's a grant that allows us to pay for minor medical bills outside of the shelter to keep them in the home. So we'll provide that assistance in the event that our grant isn't even going to touch what that medical bill is. We work with multiple different platforms to help raise funding. You guys might have heard of Waggle. It's a nationwide platform that recently expanded their reach to try to engage shelters. We have a credit union in town that wanted to reach out to us and help provide alternative financial support. So there's multiple different approaches that can be taken to try to address that. Doesn't have to prevent the pet from getting back home.
And I would like to add on to this just a little bit. So it's as we hear here, like there's so many different, every community is so different and all of that resources per community, right? What if you don't have a fund? What if you don't have a medical fund? Or what if you're municipal and your medical budget is like $10,000 for a whole year, right? A lot of times agencies are faced with this. And so in the field, and I'm trying to maintain that as my prism here, but in the field, what we used to do, and what I used to do in particular was take video on scene of the animal and go ahead and immediately send that video to our rescue and outcomes coordinators, right? And so from there, they would immediately start on the back end before the animal even gets there, trying to find either rescue placement or funding or individuals that they can go ahead and start pleading for support on scene. And that helped tremendously. And one of those videos that I actually took, like the dodo got it, and it ended up getting 67 million views, right? So everybody loves a good video. And if there's a video attached with, whether it be like a gnarly injury or something like that, a lot of times people will go above and beyond whenever it does hit their social media channels to donate whenever they get to see it in front of them, right? It isn't on, sitting comfortably already on a vet table. Right at that point, the donor might say, well, that dog is already receiving treatment. And I do think that there's some psychology involved with that. And I do think animal control officers have the opportunity to get ahead of it with those videos in the field and go ahead and communicate immediately with the teammates within the shelter.
I find people are much more willing to donate to animals than most other cases. So absolutely play on those heartstrings to get money.
Thank you. All right, we're going to do last question, rapid fire. We're going to talk about stray to finder, also called friendly finder programs. We got 2 questions about troubleshooting around it. So one is, what if your organization is concerned about liability with those programs? And do you ever run into instances where the finders have a hard time giving up that pet? And how are you navigating that community member to community member communication?
We circled around the exact same questions when we decided to start our finder to foster programs. The big thing that we ran into putting an animal in foster care as a stray was it would come back and say, well, who's liable for it? Are they going to return that pet? And the incidents or people being unwilling to return the pet are far and few in between. It's maybe 1 or 2 here and there. And it's a conversation. It's usually all that needs to happen to explain why it's a good idea for it to go back home. It's education. But the vast majority of people want to help you. So they're going to do what you need in that moment, whether it's returning the pet, holding it in their home as a stray. We have a contract. We have 2 different contracts that we have anybody who wants to foster a stray for us. So the first one is our regular foster care agreement. It's what every foster that ever takes home a pack pet has to sign. It just has our general terms of expectations from both us and from the foster. And then we have an additional one specifically for those that are strays to kind of address those concerns. Like if we ask you to do this, we need to know where this pet is at all time. You need to do this, you need to do this. Whenever we have a case from our animal protection team that we're sending out to foster, but that animal is evidence, we have a special form that they sign to make sure it's extra protected that they have to abide by. We kind of mimicked our stray form to have a lot of that language in it. We had it approved by our attorneys and all that. So, when people sign a contract like that, they're a little bit more inclined to do what you need them to do.
Follow the rules.
I would say, I think it's more of a fear than a reality. So it's definitely worth trying at least.
Your
I would like to-
your
sorry.
risk management team it depends on your risk management team also, right? They're the ones that take care of protecting for us, the county. So explaining to them how this program is going to work, you know, kind of meeting in the middle, what they expect from us, for them to be able to say, yes, we expect them to be able to do for us, was also that. But if in this day and age, everyone can sue anyone for anything, right? So we got to remember that if we adopt a dog out, even though they signed papers saying they understood all that, and we have people that will try to sue us because the dog they adopted didn't meet their expectations. So there's always that same risk, regardless if they sign that paperwork as an adoption or if they sign that paperwork as a foster. It's the same risk that everyone has. So it depends on the risk management team, anyone that is basically signing the checks for those people that are suing, or for liability and medical, hospitalizations, bites, all of that. So that's how we look at it. They're the same risks. And as Katelyn said, we very rarely have anything. I think in the last 5 years that we have been kind of pushing foster, intake to foster, I think we've had 2, and those were because the dog got out of their custody and bit another dog down the street who also was in leash law violation. So those were the things that we were looking at, and for us, that program was more valuable than those 2 instances.
Can I also just throw in for a little bit of a lighter thing, to kind of back on what Nick said? Remember the power of video and social. I know not all of your constituents are going to be on social and things like that, but a lot of them are. And I'm always amazed by all the different shelters that I follow, how many do so much about adoption. And I know they have very robust return to home programs. If we were putting equal emphasis on, look at this amazing finder foster that helped get this pet home, more people in your community are going to want to do it. They'll be embarrassed, frankly, if they try to keep the dog. It becomes a thing. It becomes a social construct of, we as a community are helping these lost pets get home. If there's a pet that's found in your shelter, do a video. Those are always amazing videos when people find their pet in the shelter. And it is something that will drive more and more people to understand, like, oh, this is what the shelter does. They're not just about adopting pets. They're not just about picking up, you know, whatever. It is a huge opportunity for you guys to just, with a 30-second video of a pet being reunited, to make everybody in the community feel good, and then start to talk about return to home.
Yeah. And cash in on those people that are coming in and are fostering for you because they found an animal and they get reunited. Cash in on those people that now they've had a taste of fostering, right? Bring them into your fostering program. Katelyn uses them for her safety net. That's how that she gains those people, because they fostered once by accident because they found an animal, and now we have them as permanent fosters because they had a great experience in that process. So there are so many ways to gain fosters for your programs.
I could not have scripted a better conclusion for this webinar. So thank you to our panelists so much for your insights, for being so open and sharing. Thank you to everyone who attended. Thank you for your questions. You are the ones doing the work. And so just really appreciate you. Please do fill out that little poll. It helps me make sure I don't waste your time because I don't want to take you away from the animals. So thank you, everyone. We're going to end it here. Really appreciate you all, and have a great evening.